So here I have a book by Titus, Rivas, or at least that's what it looks like to me, called The Self Does Not Die. And it's about near-death experiences, and it compiles a bunch of them together. Now, near-death experiences can have some interesting occurrences, like where people are under anesthetic and they have their near-death experience and they successfully recall certain events that happened during their surgery that they couldn't have possibly known because they were, under anesthetic and having surgery performed on them. So there are some things like that are interesting. But then we also have a couple others that are like, oof, you believe that, huh? But I am going to quickly read one part before I get to the story that I want to get to. And this is from page 383, and it says, where skeptical explanations fail. And it says, no criticism allowed? One might get the impression from those comments that no criticism of NDE cases, and in that case it's just near-death experience, is allowed. Not so. We believe firmly that a critical approach to NDE phenomena is essential at all times, because someone could indeed present an NDE that is no more than a fantasy, or even something dreamed up to make things interesting. Consequently, NDE researchers are quite keen to investigate only authentic NDE reports, and have learned to separate the wheat from the chaff. Extensive stories told with great exuberance about journeys to higher spheres populated by miraculous divine beings do not come across as authentic, and thus have much less evidential power than brief and somberly written accounts. Reports supported by vertical and verifiable details have the greatest evidential power. Now that would be like what I was just mentioning with the vertical and verifiable, and in this case, vertical just means it conforms to reality, essentially. So, it's accurate. Like what I mentioned, you're under anesthetic, and you recall details of a conversation that two people had while you were under anesthetic, like the surgeons or whatever. Or even people that aren't in the room, in the operating room, because people will sometimes leave their surgical area during their near-death experience, and hear people talking either outside of the room, or hear it from inside the room as well. I've seen that one a couple times, where their hearing will improve so much that they're able to hear something from down the hallway, even though they didn't necessarily leave the operating theater. So that would be what a vertical detail is. It's one that is accurate to reality. But I want you to keep that in mind, though, because it says a couple things that I think are a bit nonsensical. We're only keen on investigating authentic reports, and it's the problem with that statement is, technically speaking, you can't only investigate authentic reports. Part of the investigation should be determining whether or not it is authentic. So, it's just a bit of a weird phrasing there. Anyways, I'm going to get to the story. This is from page 225. It's case 8.5. Jennifer. This case appeared in a documentary on the Biography channel. The segment has been posted online on YouTube without specific production information. Jennifer, NDE, 2012. Jennifer was the fourth of 5 girls who grew up in Vermont. She was the only one in the family who had a neurological disorder. It involved tics and epileptic seizures that would occur a dozen times a day. This condition was very problematic for her because it greatly limited her control over her body. Excuse me. In June 1971, when Jennifer was 13 years old, she was home alone with her older sister Patty and Patty's boyfriend. The girls' parents had gone away for a few days, leaving Patty in charge. In documentary coverage, both Jennifer and her sister offered their stories of what transpired during a sudden thunderstorm, and these witness accounts confirm each other. A big wind came up, rain started pelting down, and lightning flashed more and more frequently. The claps of thunder were coming closer. The girl's father had a ham radio tower that served as a kind of satellite receiver, located at the back of the house. From its location away from home, he became aware of the advancing storm, and was concerned that the tower might act as a lightning rod that could cause a house fire. He telephoned the girls to ask them to lower the tower. The girls ran outside, and Jennifer tried to lower the tower using its metal hand crank. As she did, lightning struck the tower. Jennifer felt a sharp pain and could not let go of the crank. Her whole body shook, and blood was coming out of her nose and ears. She felt her whole body become totally electrified, and it seemed as if all of her insides were being destroyed by burning. She smelled the smell of frying meat. Patty asked her boyfriend to pull Jennifer off the crank, but when he tried, he himself received a huge electric shock. During this time, Jennifer had an NDE, in which she was surrounded by something like a cocoon of golden light. The light formed into the shape of a human without a face. The being came closer and closer in towards Jennifer until she was suddenly back in her body. She felt the electrical activity again, and was thrown back onto the ground, screaming, with Patty's boyfriend holding her tightly from behind. The three managed to get back inside the house, because it was still storming badly, and as Patty observed, her boyfriend and Jennifer seemed to have fully recovered. The three decided not to go to the hospital right away. In Jennifer's words, "I knew that something had changed in my body, but I felt that everything was going to be okay because of the experience I had with the golden light and the being that came to me." The following week, Jennifer went to have a complete physical and some EEGs. To the doctor's amazement, something about the biochemistry of her brain had changed. Starting from the time of the incident, her seizures had decreased. 2 years later, she had no longer needed any medications, and since then she has no longer had any neurological symptoms at all. The miraculous aspect of this case is that healing effects are hardly to be expected from being struck by lightning. In fact, it is far more plausible to assume just the opposite. So it appears that this cure was not brought about because Jennifer was completely electrified, but, as she claimed, because of her NDE. The golden light had somehow cured me. And then it gives the source, which is just a YouTube video. So, that's not a very believable story. And I'm going to break down why I don't believe it. And I'm going to not talk at all about the miraculous healing. I'm not going to mention that part. So, first off, let's just think about this. The Father of the Year here. So, they left Patty in charge, right? Her parents. Evidently, leaving Patty in charge did not involve telling her, in the event of a thunderstorm, we should roll down the ham radio tower. If she didn't know that already, which, I mean, you'd think she would, but, I mean, I don't know. Apparently not. But either way, you'd think that would have been mentioned prior to their leaving, so that the father didn't have to call them in the middle of a thunderstorm. So can you imagine that, like, conversation, like, yes, hello there, dear. Oh, yes, I understand that a storm's coming your way. Oh, what's that noise? Is that thunder? Anyways, if there's a thunderstorm heading your way, I just realized the ham radio tower's still up. So if it's still up, it could act as a lightning rod and maybe start a house fire. Well, we can't have that, now can we? So do you want to run outside in the middle of a thunderstorm and wind it down? What? What happens if lightning strikes the ham radio tower while you're winding it down? Maybe it'll be good for you. So, like, Father of the Year, right? They apparently are just irresponsible. Because that's a really dumb thing to do. And do you know what else is really dumb? If you don't want to start a house fire, is calling somebody in the middle of a thunderstorm on a corded phone, which of course in 1971 it definitely would have been. It would have been a corded phone. So, you know, lightning strikes on phone carrying poles and stuff. I'm just screwing up my words right now. That will, like, go in through the cables and ride them through if you are currently on the phone, because it's currently active. It's an open circuit. So if it's not open, then you don't really have a problem. But if it is, then that's when it might start a house fire if, like, lightning strikes the pole when you're on the phone and it rides the electricity through in the circuitry. It's like the circuits, because it was open when you're on the phone. I'm getting rambly here, I'm sorry. So, yes, that can start a house fire. But then we also have to look at okay, so there we go. Maybe the father's just stupid though. Maybe he is just an idiot. Fine. Then we have to go to Jennifer's the one lowering the ham radio tower, and so I went and I looked for the video, and we'll get back to that. But I've watched part of the video, and in the video, Patty clearly tells her sister to lower the crank. Patty doesn't get her boyfriend to do it, or herself to do it. She gets her 13-year-old epileptic sister, to do it. Her epileptic sister, whose epilepsy causes seizures dozens of times a day, and the implication with how it's worded here makes it sound as though her seizures would still occur even while on medication. And the tics, the tics stop on the medication too? The seizures, I'd assume, would be more likely to, but seizures can still occur while on medication. So it's hard to know. It's not very well worded. Either way, is that the person you want winding down the ham radio tower at go time? And it's not just a little bit either, because when they're describing it in the footage, they themselves describe a chaotic scene. There's branches flying everywhere. The wind is the wind is flying everywhere. It's pushing everywhere so hard that the rain is going sideways in some cases. They said that. So it's or at least I'm pretty sure they said that. Now that I think about it, it's been a while since I watched the episode, or watched the clip, so they might not have said that, but I'm pretty sure they said that. Either way, they are describing a very chaotic scene. One in which you'd think, actually, a 13-year-old girl would probably have problems even just, standing up. Not even just a 13-year-old girl. I remember when I was, 13, I wasn't the biggest kid. Really harsh, really harsh winds, I guess, or stiff winds would actually give me significant problems. I would, that they might not knock me over, but they would slow down my walking. They'd make it harder for me to go forward and stuff. And so it's that's the person you want to wind it down in the middle of the thunderstorm, really? The epileptic 13-year-old who can't control her body very well? That doesn't make sense. And then, of course, we get to the lightning strike itself, which just does not behave like a lightning strike. So it hits the ham radio tower, but then it just seems to stay within it, because it's... Here's the thing about a lightning strike, right? The only thing the lightning really wants to do is go into the ground. That's what it's attempting to do. It is discharging from the clouds into the ground. The electricity wants to be grounded. So it looks for the fastest path to the ground. And that's why it will hit a taller object, not necessarily a metallic object, but just a tall object, because it connects to the ground closer to the clouds, which is where the lightning is coming from. So because of that, the lightning strikes occur very quickly, right? But look at how this one occurs. Jennifer literally describes her whole body shaking, and blood was coming out of her nose and ears, which shouldn't happen from a lightning strike to begin with. She felt her whole body become totally electrified. That doesn't sound like what should occur, because it should happen like that, right? No, I'm not the best snapper, I'm sorry, but the event should have been realistically over before they even realized what really happened. Because that's how fast a lightning strike is, right? It doesn't persist. If you're thinking of a person being tased, you're not thinking of the right kind of thing. Because a taser is a continuous pulse of energy, one that is provided by a battery. And so it's different than a lightning strike. So yes, a taser will make you go down and keep you tased for a couple of seconds because it's a continuous source of electricity, but a lightning strike is not. It is one really, really, really large burst of electricity. And that one really large burst of electricity just wants to go all the way into the ground, like I said. So that's what it does. It would not just stay within the ham radio tower in the way it's describing. It would just go right through, and so she would not have her whole body destroyed by burning, right? That isn't how it would work. She wouldn't smell the smell of burning meat, and I have to question that. Think about that. She can smell the smell of burning meat? How is that? Her sense of smell is still not affected? How is that possible? If it's burning her insides like that, you'd think that, like, it would also be frying her nostrils, but I guess not. You know, so that doesn't really make any sense. And then again, like, just thinking about the timing, Patty asked her boyfriend to pull Jennifer off the crank, and then he tried, and he received a shock, and then got knocked back. Think about how much time that takes, right? The next time a lightning strike happens, try saying, pull her off the crank, or even just pull her off. Pull her off. I'm pretty sure that's what Patty said. That's not a very long sentence, right? But can you finish that before the lightning strike ends? I don't think you can, let alone having somebody actually start to move, attempt to pull her off, and then get knocked back themselves. Like, this is not in accordance with reality. And then, of course, we have the funny part where, you know, it says, you know, like, you know, so she didn't go, I guess, to higher planes of existence or higher spheres and didn't meet multiple divine beings, but you're telling me that that's not like some kind of divine being that came along and healed her? So that should be given less evidential power, right? But here it is in the book. This is the wheat, or some of the wheat anyways, which means that they must think that this is a genuine account, and they seem to do that with their... my favorite part, well, my second favorite part is when it says the miraculous aspect of this case is that healing effects are hardly to be expected from being struck by lightning. Like, was somebody sitting there thinking that there wasn't a miracle here? Like, were they actually confused about that? Did you need to clarify that? I don't think you did. But here we are. They had to, apparently. The readers just aren't that smart, I guess. Anyways, my favorite part comes in at the source. Circuit City. Sorry, I just... only like 5 people are going to get that. And it wasn't that funny. But... do you remember when it said it was posted to YouTube without specific production information? We're going to come back to that, because I decided in the course of my attempting to look up this story, because I really didn't believe it when I heard it, and I wanted to see their side of the story, so I went to go find it. And what I did was I went to the Biography Channel YouTube page, because I know that just made sense to me. I mean, he quotes the Biography Channel. He doesn't say it's on their YouTube page, I guess, but I don't know. I just went there thinking that I'd find it there, and I didn't. I found a short clip that was a minute long, but I was like, well, that's a minute long. That's not long enough to cover this entire story, right? It'd take me more than a minute to read the entire thing. It's going to have to be longer than this. And sure enough, it is, because it was only a clip. It was only a preview. So what I had to do was I just typed in the URL that it gives me into my search engine. And, well, the YouTube video has been taken down due to a copyright strike, which I find hilarious. Like, could you imagine if you were providing, like, sources for homework or something, and your source just ends up not being there when the teacher goes to check it? Like, it's not a good look, is it? No, it's not. Because notice that it doesn't even give the name of the documentary. So apparently, whoever wrote this book, the person's Dutch, so I guess, you know, maybe there's that. So, you know, maybe you can't hold them to 100% the same account, but but people who helped translate it could have looked this up. It's not that hard. I just typed in Jennifer NDE into biography, the biography YouTube channel, and found the short clip. The show is called I Survived Beyond and Back, and that information took me all of 10 seconds to find, so I don't know why they couldn't find it for their book to properly cite the source. Right? Like, do you not care about that? Properly citing your sources? It just feels so disingenuous to me. Like, you sit here and claim that you've separated the wheat. Yes, we've learned to separate the wheat from the chaff. How dare you insinuate that we might not be entirely competent? We are the greatest. We only investigate genuine accounts. Somehow. Even though, again, you'd think, amongst your investigation, that would be how you determine whether or not it's true. You cannot only investigate genuine accounts. That does not make sense. Anyways, I think that's all I really have to say about this one. If you believe it, you can continue believing it if you want. I personally don't think that this warrants any real belief. I think they have to provide significantly more evidence than, well, the two of them said it, and it's on the biography channel, so I guess it has to be true. Because what do you think, like, the biography channel is gonna just lie, or even just have low standards? Like, I'm not even necessarily saying well, the biography channel is a lie. I mean, I kind of do have to say Jennifer and Patty are lying, because I just don't believe their outlandish story, with all the reasons I've highlighted. But, you know, the biography channel could just be like, well, we don't really care. We just, you know, they're just in it to make money, right? So I don't know. I do not see how you can look at that story and actually come away thinking, yeah, that's not a made-up story, but a genuine story about an actual miracle that occurred, because that's ridiculous. It seems ridiculous. The entire thing doesn't really make sense to me. And, okay, I did end up mentioning technically the healing, I guess, because I mentioned the gold being of light, but that does kind of break their rule, doesn't it? And there's a couple other cases that do as well. Well, and they don't do it directly in the book, but like Mellon Thomas Benedict, he's another one that's in here. Just 2 pages later, actually. Well, a couple pages later, on 259. So yeah, Mellon Thomas Benedict, he talks about going to like higher planes and seeing like every soul that existed, and how none of them have evil in them, and all this other stuff. And it's like, well, okay, but doesn't that get less evidential power? But they still act as though everything he's saying is the honest truth. And it's like, you're not really doing a good job of making me think you're an honest person here, that you are truly looking for things that are miraculous because you want to expose the truth. It, to me, seems like you're looking for the miraculous because you want miracles to be real. And you might be doing that in earnest, you might believe you're doing it in all honesty, but people are good at fooling themselves, right? I always hear Christians say that about people. You know, they'll acknowledge that, but they'll never admit it of themselves. And, like, I can fool myself, sure. I did a lot when I used to believe in God. So, you know, I understand that concept. But the point is, if you actually want the truth, then you should follow the truth. And if you look at a story like that does not really conform fully to reality, or just looks absolutely ridiculous for everyone involved, I really have to question whether or not they are telling the truth. And in this case, I definitely have to, for all the reasons I've highlighted. Anyways, I guess I'm just kind of going in circles at this point. I'm not great with scripting. So, yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the view of my little park here. These are all powered launch coasters, because I have a weird thing for powered launch coasters.